Hi, this is Camden Peterson for Dr. Kwan, and today we're going to be going through how to make this barbed part in SolidWorks. So as you can see, it consists of a revolve, a loft, and then a cut loft. We're going to go through how to make this part from scratch in SolidWorks. So to start, we're going to go ahead and open a new part, and we're going to begin a sketch on the front plane. So we highlight front plane and we click on the sketch button. And we're going to start by drawing a couple of lines. We're going to draw a line from the origin, a vertical line. So be sure that that vertical constraint appears. And then we're just going to draw an arbitrary angled line. We're going to draw it slightly angled above the horizontal axis. That looks pretty good. We're going to go ahead and hit escape. And then let's add some dimensions. So we're working in millimeters here, and this is going to be 3.175 millimeters. And you can see it automatically scales the other line to adjust to that. So that's the first dimension we put in. We are in millimeters. If you're not in millimeters, you can highlight in the bottom right corner and you can switch. SolidWorks will automatically change the dimension. So now we're going to use linear sketch pattern, and it's exactly how it sounds. You highlight some sort of geometry, and then what you're doing is you're patterning it, you're repeating it. So with this line, we're going to be repeating it. We can define the spacing. We're going to choose 5 millimeters in between, and we're going to choose for 5 of these. So we're going to have 5 of these angled lines. And we can go ahead and hit OK, and there we have the 5 angled lines. Now we're going to add a couple more here. We're going to use a horizontal line, and we're going to connect it. We're going to connect to the very tip of that 4th angled line. So be sure that the horizontal and vertical constraints appear and that you connect to that point. Now, those look pretty good. We can hit OK. Now, if we dimension this horizontal line, we're going to choose 20 millimeters. Because we chose 20 millimeters and we have 4 of these angled lines, you can see that they're sitting on top of each other because the spacing that we chose was 5 millimeters. So you can kind of see how that works. This other vertical line is going to be 3.375 millimeters. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add a couple of arbitrary angled lines. Again, these don't seem to have specific dimensions in SolidWorks. However, you always can add dimensions if you'd like. If you would like it to look a certain way, a certain angle. We're going to use linear sketch pattern on these smaller angled lines as well. To repeat it, we're going to choose 3 times, and we're going to use that same 5 millimeter spacing. And what that does is that at the tip of each of these angled lines, we have a connection now from the tip of an angled line crossing into the next one. And you'll see why that's important as we get to the revolution and it starts to look like that barbed part. So what we can do is we can trim these excess parts of the line. If we trim to closest, then it will trim completely to those points where they connect. So we choose that, and we just pick those extra parts that are hanging. Then we can go ahead and trim that extra angled line that we created. And you can see the sketch is now closed. The top angled lines are blue, and that's because they don't have a rigid dimension. That looks pretty good. It's closed, it's gray. We can exit the sketch. And what we're going to do is a revolved boss slash base. And as you can see, as I highlighted that, what you need is you need this closed sketch, which we have. We just created it. But we also need an axis for it to revolve around. And we can do that. We go to reference geometry, and we click on this bottom line, which is going to be what we revolve around. So now we have our axis. It's called axis 2. Yours might say axis 1. That's completely fine. We highlight our sketch and we click revolve. It's going to ask for our axis of revolution. We just made that. So we click on our axis, and you can see that SolidWorks now generates what that revolution is going to look like. 360 degrees is of course good. That's what we're looking for. And there you go, it generates it. So now you can see it's starting to look a little bit more like what we had at the beginning. And now we need to create our loft. And we need to use two separate geometries. A loft is connecting two separate geometries that are on two different planes. So we're going to define our first plane 5 millimeters away from that circular edge. So we click on that face and then we define 5 millimeters away. That's our plane 1. Now what we're going to do is we want to create another plane here on the back. We could either click on it or we could click on the front. We're going to go ahead and click on the front here. And then we're going to define a plane 20 millimeters away from the front, which will be in the back. Just to kind of show that process again, we choose our first reference. That's going to be this front circle. It already shows the 5 millimeters because that's what we used last time. However, we want to flip that offset. And like I said, we want to move it to the back. So we want it to be in the back of the part on that back face, back circular face, just like that. So we choose 20 millimeters, which we've already defined as the length. So now we have our two planes 5 millimeters apart. One of them is on that back circle. And what you can see is we're connecting that circular edge to a square. You can think of a loft as an extrusion that's connecting two sketches or two geometries. And right now it'll be that circular edge and then a square, which means we need to go ahead and create that square. So we can do that. We can highlight plane 1, add a sketch, press the sketch plus button. We're going to create a square that's going to have the origin at its center. So we use rectangle, we create a rectangle. Now we need to add some dimensions to make it a square. We need to make sure we're centered about the origin. So we define origin to top. You saw that it was a 3 millimeter by 3 millimeter square, so we have 1.5 from origin to top. Likewise, origin to side is going to be 1.5 millimeters as well. And you can see we're also going to add the lengths to define it fully as a square. So 3 millimeters by, of course, 3 millimeters. Now you can see that our sketch is fully defined. It's black. It's closed. The center is gray. We can exit our sketch. Now the nice thing is we don't actually need to draw a sketch on this plane 2. A lot of times for lofts we'll be drawing two different sketches and connecting them, but here on plane 2 we already have the geometry, we already have that circular edge. And SolidWorks is just going to let us click on that circular edge. So we click loft. It's going to ask for our profiles that are being connected. Sketch 4 is automatically on there. And now we need to add this circular edge. So we get close and we highlight the circular edge. And you can see SolidWorks generate what that will look like. Looks good. We're going to go ahead and hit OK. And you can see that we're now looking a lot closer to the barbed part. So the only thing we're missing at this point is that lofted cut. There's some material taken away. Looks like the circular face in the back is open, as well as there's a smaller square section that's been cut out. And that runs all the way through, and that is a lofted cut. Which a lofted cut is basically a loft, but instead of connecting material, you're removing it. So we need to once again have our two different sketches or our two different profiles that we're connecting. So let's go ahead and create a sketch. We can use that same plane, and let's create that smaller square. So we're going to create that smaller square. Once again, the origin is going to be at the center of it. So let's add our dimensions here. Now this square is going to be 2 by 2, so we want 1 from origin to side. Origin to top likewise is going to be 1 millimeter. So we add those dimensions. Now we need to dimension the lengths. And that will be 2 millimeters by, of course, 2 millimeters. Now, if it looks a little strange before you fully dimension it out, don't worry. As long as you add all of those dimensions and you choose to have the origin at the center, it will look like this. So now we have that fully defined sketch. It's grayed in the center, it's closed. And we can exit, we can go to our features. And now we need to create that circle on the back of this, or on this circular face here, so that that material can be cut away. So we add a sketch on this back face. We don't even need to define a plane here because we're just adding a sketch on the face. SolidWorks will automatically allow us to do that. And so we're going to go ahead and create our circle here. We click on the origin and then we expand. And then let's add a dimension. We go to sketch, use our dimension, our smart dimension. The diameter is going to be 5 millimeters. If it chooses to define it by the radius, you know just to divide by 2, that's 2.5 millimeters, but the diameter is 5. We can exit our sketch. And now we have our 2 sketches that we're going to be connecting, our 2 profiles, that we're going to use to cut away this material through the barbed part. So we can go back to features. And you can see we find lofted cut. Click on that. Our sketch 6 is already in there. And so we just need to highlight our smaller square sketch here as well. And you can do that. You can see the drop down on the top left corner. We can open that up and we can just click on it directly. And you can see SolidWorks generate a preview for that. So we have that preview, everything looks good. We're going to hit OK. And now we have our barbed part. And you can see it looks just like what we had in the beginning. We have our revolve, we have our loft, we have our lofted cut, and we used linear sketch pattern to create this. Now, if at any point things went a little too fast, feel free to slow this video down. Absolutely no problem with doing that. As long as you follow the steps, you will end up with what is shown here. Once again, I'm Camden Peterson for Dr. Kwan. This is how to make the barbed part in SolidWorks. I wish you all the best.